All righty, I think we should just start the meeting. It is 2 o'clock. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Innovations in Nutrition Programs and Service Grantee Call. My name is Miles Rather, and I serve as a Grants Management Specialist for the Administration for Community Living. The point of today's presentation is to provide information that will be helpful as you manage your grant. We want to resolve common issues our grantees face while managing their federal award. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation. Please submit all your questions in the chat and they will be answered in the order they were received at the end of the presentation. Now, let's go over to today's agenda. Today, we'll be focusing on two systems that recipients will frequently use. Those systems are Grant Solutions and the Payment Management System, also known as PMS. We will begin with Grant Solutions and highlight what a grantee uses Grant Solutions for. Next, you will watch a 10-minute video on how to navigate through Grant Solutions with your grantee's account. Following the video, I will discuss the difference between your budget period and your project period. After, I will talk about the 6 amendments that ACO processes the most. In this section, I will talk about when you should submit each amendment, only if it's applicable to your organization, why a grantee would need to submit a specific amendment, and how should a grantee submit their amendment. Other information regarding required documentation and helpful information will be highlighted as well. The last topic we will cover in Grant Solutions is your program progress reports, more specifically when you should submit your reports and where to submit those reports. The payment management system will be the next topic we cover. First, I will talk about drawdowns. We will cover what information is needed to complete a drawdown, answer common questions recipients have about drawdowns, and I will explain the difference between spending and pulling down your funds. We will then transition to the federal financial reports, also known as FFRs or SF-425s. I will let you know the exact information you need to search for your FFRs, when they are due, and where to submit the documents. Following the payment management system section of the presentation, I will provide links that I highly suggest everyone visit to gain knowledge on everything we have discussed today. I want to point out that the helpful links will be sent in the email that I send to all the AORs for INNU grantees, and you'll be able to review it then. They're not on this said PowerPoint. Moving forward, I will end the presentation with my contact information since I am your assigned GMS during this entire process, as well as begin our Q&A session. Now, let's jump right into the presentation. Grant Solutions provides recipients access to a lot of features within their system. The 4 main functions a grantee will use Grant Solutions for is to submit an amendment, submit your mid-year report, also known as your program progress report, reviewing your notice of award, also known as the NOA, and finally submitting non-competing continuation applications. In the next slide, I will show a video that will be helpful with navigating through Grant Solutions.
So upon logging in, the My Grants list screen appears with the Grants tab selected. A marker below the tab indicates that this is the current active tab. The global navigation bar, which is this white bar at the top, is found here and
Hi,
contains.
Miles. I don't think we can see the video. I hear it.
Oh,
The Grant Solutions
Let
logo
me-
direct.
let me pause that. All right.
We
And
are.
what's the current slide you see is a helpful video on how to navigate through Grant Solutions?
I can see the video too.
Yep, I can.
Oh, you can't see it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. Give me one quick second. And I'll share it from the web page itself. Sorry about that, everybody. Here.
So upon logging
Okay. Can you see it now?
in,
Yes, it's just
Yeah.
smaller.
Yes, yes. If you could pop it and make it larger, that would be perfect. I think it's just very small. I think it's just that the hand that was moving on the video was just very small, and so it was hard to notice. But
Okay.
I could at least see it.
Can you see it now? I expanded it on the screen.
Yeah, thank you, Maya.
Yes.
No problem. Okay. All right, and I'm going to begin the video. Thank you so much, everyone.
The My Grants List screen appears with the Grants tab selected. A marker below the tab indicates that this is the current active tab. The global navigation bar, which is this white bar at the top, is found here and contains the information for navigating to other areas within Grant Solutions. The Grant Solutions logo directs the user to grantsolutions.gov. To the right of the logo, we see the grant recipient organization name. We can click the Opportunities tab here to access available funding opportunities. And if we click the tab, we are directed to the funding opportunity screen in the classic experience of the grants management module, which is GMM. To return to the My Grants List screen in the new experience, we can click on the Grants tab on the menu bar. So that's at the top here. And then we can go to My Grants List and go back to the My Grants List screen. At this point, we are directed to the My Grants List screen in the classic experience. Please note that today we are experiencing some technical difficulties because this is one of our lower environments. Normally there would be a link here next to the organization name at the top here called Switch to New Experience. We could use the Switch to New Experience link to return to the new experience. We would then be directed to the My Grants List screen in the new experience. For purposes of this training today, however, I'm going to use the back button in the browser to navigate back to the My Grants List screen. All right, so on the My Grants List screen, back in the new experience, we have the Applications tab. This is located to the right of the Opportunities tab, and here we could access the My Applications List screen. Also on the My Grants List screen, let's go over to the right side and click the Help Center icon. This is the icon with the question mark in a circle, and it's located to the right of the Grants tab. So we're going to click this tab and we will access help and support resources. I'm sorry, clicking the button, not the tab. All right, so now we have landed on the grant recipient support and reference screen. If we wanted to return to the My Grants List screen, we can simply close the tab. All right, on the My Grants List screen, we can click the User Avatar dropdown to the right of the global navigation bar. Here, we first see the user's first and last initials appear in a blue circle to the left of the dropdown. Once the dropdown is open, the user's first and last name appear at the top of the dropdown. The dropdown contains the following options: update profile, change password, user roles, notification preferences, user account management, online data collection, provide feedback, pending grants, switch back to classic, and log out. The update profile button, if we click it, takes the user to the profile update screen. Here we can change any profile information we would need to if we wanted to update this. And then we can click the back button in the browser to return back to the My Grants List screen. Navigating back to the user avatar dropdown, the next button we're going to take a look at is the Change Password button. The Change Password button directs the user to the Change Password screen. This is where you can change your password if you need to. And these screens that we're going through right now are in GMM currently. This is just the new way to be able to navigate to them. So if I wanted to change my password, I could do this. I'm going to click the back button in the browser to go back to the My Grants List screen. Again, back in the user avatar dropdown, I'm going to select the next button, which is the user roles button. This button directs the user to the Your Roles and Grants Management screen, where you can see your roles. Again, we can click the back button in the browser to return to the My Grants List screen. The next button we're going to take a look at is the Notification Preferences button. This button directs the user to the Notification Preferences screen, where you can change your preferences for when you will receive certain notifications, what notifications you will receive, and other similar related information. To go back to the My Grants List screen, again, I'm just going to click the back button in the browser. The User Account Management button expands if we click it to reveal the Review Requests and Manage Accounts functions. Both of these buttons direct users to the Grantee Self-Registration or GSR module, and they're only available to grant recipients with access to GSR based on partner settings. The Review Request button directs the user to the User Registration Administration Requests List screen. Here we don't have any pending requests, but if we did, they would show up here. We can click the back button in the browser to go back to the My Grants List screen. Also in the user avatar dropdown, if I go back to the User Account Management button and expand it again, the next button we're going to look at is the Manage Accounts button. This button directs the user to the User Registration Administration Manage Accounts screen. I'm going to click the back button in the browser again to return back to the My Grants List screen. The Online Data Collection button directs the user to the Online Data Collection or OLDC module. This option is only available to specific partners who have access to OLDC based on partner settings. The Provide Feedback button directs the user to the Grant Solutions Feedback Survey. From here, the user can provide feedback on interactions with the new experience if you wanted to. It's going to ask you a series of questions, and you would just go through, and we're not going to go through the survey today, but you could go through and complete the survey if you wanted to, giving feedback on the new experience. Once the survey is completed and submitted, the user is directed to grantsolutions.gov. To navigate back to the My Grants List screen without completing the survey this morning, we're going to click the back button in the browser just to go back. All right, the next button is the Pending Grants button. The Pending Grants button directs the user to the Pending Grants screen. This is where the user could view pending grants that are still in processing if the user wanted to. The Switch Back to Classic button directs the user back to the classic experience of GMM. This button gives the option to provide feedback on the new experience survey every time it is selected. Grant Solutions solicits user feedback through this survey to better understand how to improve the user experience. For right now, I'm just going to select No Thanks at the bottom. We're then directed to the My Grants List screen and the classic experience, regardless of completing the survey. Like I mentioned earlier, normally we can return to the new experience by clicking the Switch to New Experience link on the screen, and it would show up here next to the organization name. However, also like I mentioned earlier, we are experiencing some technical difficulties today in our lower environment. So we will click the back button in the browser to go back to the My Grants List screen. Now we're going to take a look at our last button in the user avatar dropdown, which is the Log Out button. The log out button in the user avatar dropdown logs the user out of the system. I'm not going to click this today, but please note that this is the main function for how a user should log out of Grant Solutions.
All righty. Switching back to the PowerPoint now.
So upon
So everyone can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good. All right, thank you so much. So this leads us into your budget period and your project period. And there's a couple things I just want to point out. Sometimes our recipients do get confused on the difference between the budget period and the project period, and I want to ensure that we all know the difference between the two. Your budget period is 12 months in total. Because our INNU grantees are not fully funded meaning projects who receive all their approved federal funds in their initial award, you will be given a portion of your award in 12-month intervals. For example, let's say you have a 36-month project period. Also, let's assume your project period start date is July 1st, 2023, and you were approved for a federal award worth $750,000. That is not fully funded. You would receive $250,000 on July 1st, 2023, July 1st, 2024, and July 1st, 2025. Now, this is given that there's no budget reduction due to a non-competing continuation application submitted by the grantee or the availability of federal funds. And I want to explain both scenarios, starting with the NCC application or non-competing continuation. There's been times where a grantee, again, let's say they were given $750,000 and they budgeted for $250,000 for their 3 years they're going to be having their award. And they realize that they don't need $250,000 maybe in their budget year 2 because they're cutting out personnel or a conference that they initially budgeted for is not occurring anymore. So therefore, you will submit your NCC application with a revised budget that's maybe asking for $200,000 instead of $250,000. We will be funding you at either the max that ACL will allow you to be funded, or we will be funding you based off of what you have requested in your application. Now, I want to talk about the availability of federal funds for ACL that may lead to a budget reduction. There is times when the budget comes back and maybe we are off by, let's say $1,000, $2,000. That will affect all the programs within a specific NOFO. Therefore, there might be a small deduction that may occur to your budget. And when you get your award, you may not get, again, that $250,000. You could get $247,000 or $248,000. The reductions at that point, if it's an ACL availability of funds issue, you will not have to do. As your GMS, I will process what they call a budget revision. And it's an Excel file that we use to then reduce all categories by a equivalent amount, so it can equal what we need it to equal. Now let's talk about your project period. A project period is the entire duration of your award. If we are using the example from earlier, 36-month project period not fully funded, your project period would be July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026, which encompasses those 3 years you will have that funding. If you ever receive a federal award that is fully funded, your project period start date and end date will be the same as your budget period start date and end date. Lastly, the only way a recipient can change their organization's budget period end date or project period end date is through an NCE, which is also known as a no-cost extension, which we will go over soon. On to the next slide leads us to good old amendments. Now we focus on some, but not all amendments that can be submitted through Grant Solutions. As I stated during the agenda slide, these 6 amendments are the most requested amendments ACL receives. ACL's, as shown on this slide, those 6 amendments are no cost extension amendments, carryover amendments, key personnel change amendments, EIN change amendments, change in scope amendment, and a budget revision amendment. In the next slides, I will discuss the importance of all 6 amendments, starting with a no cost extension. A no-cost extension is a non-competitive increase of time up to 12 months of the final budget period without additional federal funds or change in scope to complete existing project activities. First question, why would I need an NCE? If you're asking yourself that. A no-cost extension is needed when your approved project goals and activities cannot be completed during your approved project period. An example of this could be if a conference was scheduled during your project period, but now it is occurring 3 months after the project period end date. An NCE amendment request like this would be accepted due to the conference being held outside normal project period window. Now, let's say you have a 3-year project from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026, and you have a conference scheduled during your first budget period, which it would be July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. And if the conference suddenly occurs during your second budget period, which would then be July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, you will not be able to request an NCE because the conference is now occurring in year 2 and not your final budget year. In this example, that would be July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. That said budget period, the third, could be extended. I use the conference as an example, but anything that hinders your ability to complete project goals and objectives before the project period end date can be used to request an NCE. Please note that ACL will need to review your request to determine if you have a legitimate reason for an NCE. Not all NCE amendments are accepted. A common reason why some NCE amendments get rejected is because of COVID. ACL no longer accepts a NCE justification that states COVID is impacting the ability to complete goals and objectives. Next question, when should I submit my amendment? An NCE request must be submitted at least 30 days prior to the scheduled end of your project period. Any NCE amendment submitted 29 days or less before the end of the project will be automatically rejected by ACL. How do I submit my request? All amendments are submitted through Grant Solutions. The amendment type for a no-cost extension is type 4. What are the required documents? The required documents are a cover letter signed by your authorized organizational representative, also known as your AOR, that includes your grant number, your organization name, your specific proposed date, which is the new project period end date you want, the amount of the remaining unobligated funds, only if applicable, if you have funds remaining, an explanation on why the work has not been completed, and a detailed work plan on how all unfinished activities will be completed by the proposed extended end date. Other helpful information I can provide, an NCE request cannot be requested before you have an unobligated balance remaining. An NCE request cannot be requested because you have an unobligated balance remaining. NCE requests are for additional time to complete goals, not additional time to spend any remaining federal funds you have after all your project objectives and goals are completed. Next, that will lead us into a carryover amendment. And a carryover amendment is forwarding an unobligated balance of funds from a previous budget period to cover allowable costs in the current budget period. A carryover must be requested in support of activities aligned with the grantee's existing goals and objectives to cover costs not already incurred by the recipient. Why would I need a carryover request? Two common reasons you would need to request a carryover is because an increase in cost in another budget period, in another budget period, and objectives occurring in another budget period. Let's say you have a 3-year project from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2026 that is not fully funded. If goals you have written in your work plan from budget year 1 instead incur in budget year 2, you can carry the federal funds allocated towards that goal for year 1 and send them to budget year 2, since that is when the work is happening. The other reason for a carryover is for the increase in cost for a specific goal. Let's say you are in your second budget period and you have an unobligated balance of $5,000 from your budget year 1. You can carry over the $5,000 from year 1 to your budget year 2 to cover the increase in cost, whether it's we have an increase in supplies, the contract is a little bit more than what we anticipated for. These are the set of reasons we will approve your carryover. When should I submit my amendment? The best time to submit a carryover amendment is after you submit your annual FFR for that specific budget period. And I say that because when you submit your carryover, you just want to, again, make sure that you're not doing any drawdowns, because that's what we look at when we go to complete this action in the system. The required documents for a carryover would be a cover letter signed by your AOR that includes your grant number, organization name, a written explanation of why a carryover is needed, including the reason for having unobligated funds from a prior budget year, the carryover amount that you want to carry over, and a summary of the activities that will be completed using the carryover funds. You will also need your most recent federal financial report, also known as a SF-425 or FFR, reflecting the unobligated balance of federal funds. Lastly, you will need a budget narrative / justification providing a breakdown on how the unobligated federal funds will be allocated within each budget category. Other helpful information that I may have is once you submit your carryover, as I stated, please do not draw down from that account until your request is approved or denied. The reason for this is if you request a carryover worth $50,000 and you complete a drawdown worth $10,000 after you submit your amendment, your request will be rejected because in our systems, it will no longer show you have $50,000 available to carry over. It will only show that you have $40,000. And at this point, this will create a lot of editing for you, and it's additional work that really just doesn't need to happen and can be avoided. On to our next amendment, which will be key personnel change, one of the more easier ones. A key personnel amendment is when an organization has a replacement or change in their assigned program director / principal investigator, also known as your PIPD, or your authorized organizational representative, which, as I stated before, is your AOR. Why would you need a key personnel change amendment? Staff turnover and retirement are very common reasons why one of our recipients would need to change their PIPD or AOR. Once you submit your amendment, anytime during your project period, this amendment tends to be the easiest for ACO to process, and the rejection rate for the key personnel change is lower than any other amendment that we have. How do I submit my request? As stated before, for a change in your PIPD, you will submit an amendment in Grant Solutions. The amendment type for a PIPD change is type 8, labeled ACO change in principal investigator / program or project director. For an AOR change, you will submit your request as a grant note within Grant Solutions. Now, you might be asking, what is the required documents for your PIPD change? A cover letter signed by your AOR, which includes, again, your grant number and your organization name, a justification for the change in PIPD, the new PIPD contact information, which would include their name, title, business phone number, and their business email address. Now, for an AOR change, a recipient needs, of course, a dated cover letter signed by your current AOR that contains the grant number, organization name, new AOR contact information, which would include their name, title, business phone number, and business email address, as well as an effective date of the change. So that means you would want to say, I want to make this change to our AOR on, let's say, August 10th. We would need that somewhere in your cover letter stating that, just so we can move forward with the move forward with the amendment and process it accordingly. Other helpful information I have, please make sure that the new AOR or PIPD has an active Grant Solutions account before you make your request. You can obtain a grant recipient access form from your grants management specialist via email, who is I. You would need this form in order to create a new account. And it's important that your AOR or PIPD has an account so we can link their account to the award. Without them having an active account, we cannot move this amendment forward, and it will just be lingering in the system. And we want to make sure that we are processing all amendments and applications that you guys are submitting to us in a timely manner. That leads us into our next amendment, which is the EIN change, also known as the Employer Identification Number change. An EIN change is an amendment that occurs when a grantee organization has changed the EIN associated with the award. This 9-digit number is assigned by the IRS to identify the tax accounts or employers and tax accounts of employers and certain others. Why would I need an EIN change? You would need an EIN change if you change your EIN with the IRS for any specific reason. A request is needed so we can update our records accordingly, as well as we have to deobligate the funds from the incorrect EIN and then reobligate the funds to the correct EIN that you have on file. When should I submit my amendment? I cannot stress this enough. Please submit your amendment as soon as possible if it is an EIN change. These amendments experience issues quite frequently, so you want to make sure you've requested this amendment as soon as you know your EIN has changed. How do I submit my amendment? All amendments, as I stated before, are submitted through Grant Solutions. The amendment type for an EIN change is type 8, and the labeled for it is ACL change in EIN. The required documents that are needed to request the EIN. The required documents, of course, is another cover letter signed by your AOR, which includes your grant number, organization name, an explanation of the EIN change, whether the change has financial impact on the current approved work plan that you have, your desired EIN suffix, if known, your effective date of change, and finally, an IRS determination letter with your organization's current name and new EIN. Any other helpful information that I have, please make sure the changes made with your EIN are shown on your SAM.gov registration. If it is not identical, ACL will deny your request. Moving on to the next amendment, which is a change in scope. And a change in scope occurs when the recipient proposes to change or changes the objectives, aims, or purpose identified in the approved application, such as could be shifting the research emphasis from one focus area to another, changing the service area, applying a new technology. Example could be changing methods from those originally approved to a different method, or making budget changes that cause a project to change substantially from that which was approved. So why would I need this amendment? This amendment is crucial if your previously approved goals and objectives change. ACL assumes that the objectives being worked on are previously approved objectives from your initial application. We will not know if one of your goals changed without you requesting this amendment. When should I submit my amendment? Just like an EIN change, you want to submit this request as soon as possible. How do I submit my amendment? You will submit it as an amendment, of course, in Grant Solutions. This amendment type is type 8 and is labeled ACL change in scope. Required documentation for a change in scope. You will need a dated cover letter signed by your AOR, including your grant number, organization name, effective date of change when it comes to your objectives, summary of the change in scope. This means a written explanation of why the change in scope is needed, including the reason for the change and summary of activities that will or will not be completed as a result of the change. And finally, you will also need an updated work plan and a budget narrative to follow. The helpful information I have for a change in scope, just make sure your request for a change in scope is for an allowable reason. You cannot change your scope for any reason, for all reasons. There's specific reasons why you would have to submit a change in scope, or there's a specific reasons why we would approve a change in scope. So just make sure that it's based off allowable reasons, based off the ACL policy. Moving on to, I believe, the last amendment, which is a lovely budget revision. A budget revision occurs when a grantee requests us to move more than 25%. I want to emphasize that. Requests us to move more than 25% of the total approved budget. This includes your federal and non-federal funds for a specific budget period between direct costs, categories, and the approved budget. Once this threshold is reached, the recipient must request prior approval for all additional changes during that budget period. So why would I need a budget revision? A budget revision is commonly used when specific goals cannot be achieved or there is an increase in cost in a specific budget category. An example of a specific goal not being achievable is if you have an award worth $100,000 and $80,000 of it is allocated towards personnel, but your organization is no longer hiring new personnel. You would then need to submit a request to revise those funds into into another budget category for another previously approved objective and goal. When should I submit this amendment? As soon as you're aware that you need a budget revision, I highly suggest just submit your budget revision. How do you submit your amendment/request? You will submit it as an amendment in Grant Solutions, which is also a type 8 amendment, but it is labeled ACL budget revision. And the required documents for a budget revision is a dated cover letter, of course, signed by your AOR, which includes, of course, your grant number, organization name, a written justification stating the need for the budget revision, an SF424A listing the proposed new budget category, and a budget narrative/justification detailing the proposed change in each budget category. Helpful information I have regarding a budget revision. If you realize the budget revision is less than 25% of your total approved budget, you do not need ACO prior approval. All I suggest is contacting your program officer and your grants management specialist via email and make them aware of the change. What I do with these emails, if there's any budget revisions, I take them and I attach them as a grant note within your file, just for if there's any questions with auditors on why funds were spent differently than what was initially submitted in your application. Next, we will be, yes.
Sorry, it's Alyssa. There was a question in the chat. I'm just going to read it. It says, what if we have decreases in costs, like reduced fringe rates, that leads to savings in budget? Can we use that money for something else, like increasing percent of effort of staff, students, etc.?
Yes, you can use those funds, but it would have to be for previously approved objectives. So I want to stress that. If you're using it for things that were already within scope that we approve, yes, we will allow that. Now, the budget revision may be needed to be requested in order to change those funds, because if it's above 25%, as I stated, you would need that to be priorly approved by ACL. But yes, you can use funds for other reasons as long as they're within scope. Thank you for asking that, Alyssa. Now we will go into the program progress report, give a little general information here. And sorry, one more slide. So your program progress reports are expected to be submitted as a grant note and Grant Solutions. Many of you already know this because we said this during the informational call that we had earlier. You have 30 days after the end of each 6-month interval to submit your report as a grant note. If you have any specific questions regarding your program progress report, please reach out to your assigned program officer, as the report is a document that they will review and not your grants management specialist. That then gets us into, I believe, the payment management system. The good old payment management system. So in this section, we'll be talking about requesting the drawdowns. And then we also just talk about submitting FFR reports, basically the where and when. So requesting a drawdown, what information is needed to request a drawdown? First, you need your banking account information linked to your PMS account. When you establish a PMS account, this should be one of the steps that you already have to do in order to get one. So I believe everyone here has done that step because we have awarded all 12 awards. Then you would need your payee account number that's provided to you after you create your PMS account. Then you would need your organization name as it's shown in SAM.gov, exactly how it's shown in SAM.gov. Any misspelled words or any period that's not supposed to be there, you will not be able to find your file. And if your payee account has multiple sub-accounts, let's say you have multiple awards that's going to that same payee account, you will need to add your federal award number as well. And this can be found on your NOA. What if I accidentally draw down too many funds? Recipients can return funds to PMS if needed. If you found out that you've drawn down too many funds, please return those funds, as this will cause an error within your FFR and you will experience major issues. Currently, I have a grantee that I'm working with that has drawn down too much than what she should have. And now we're trying to resolve that issue with PMS. Next, is there a specific amount of time I must spend federal funds I have drawn down? So ACL follows the 3-day spending rule. The 3-day spending rule, it basically states that when you complete drawdowns, recipients should use them for immediate cash needs only. So the date when you draw down the funds and you get them, you should only hold them on your person for 3 days. Going on to the next slide, which is more about drawing down, which is what if our project period expires and we need to request a drawdown? Will funds still be available? Yes, your federal funds will still be available after the project period end date. So you do not have to worry if, let's say you end on August 31st, 2023 of this year, and it gets to September 5th, and you're like, oh, I just need to draw down because I have, maybe an invoice or there's an expense I have to pay off. You will still be able to get your money from PMS. The funds will not stay available forever, though. So once ACL completes the closeout for a specific award, which occurs at least 120 days after the project period end date, any remaining funds will be deobligated. Any drawdown that occurs after the project period end date will require an ACL approval. So basically, when you go into PMS and you request your drawdown, what would happen is PMS will then reach out to us and state something along the lines that this is an expired account. We have a recipient here who is trying to draw down X amount of dollars. Do you approve of this request? And what ACL does is we will go into your PMS account. We will verify the amount that you're drawing down is actually available. Then we will then tell them that we approve this request. And then that's when PMS will then issue you the funds that you have been requested. I highly encourage all recipients to draw down and spend all their federal funds before the project period end date, as deobligation of your funds will occur as soon as we get your final FFR and we complete the closeout within the grants management module. Next, I want to talk about the difference between spending versus pulling down funds. What is the difference? It's a simple difference. This pulling down federal funds refers to the drawdown or organization request. So that's the initial, you pull down your funds from your bank account. The spending of the funds just refers to the transaction that is made with the federal funds. And that is the main difference. So I know there was some confusion between the two, and I just want to provide some clarity regarding that. Next, we will be heading down to the next slide, which is talking a little bit about the FFRs. So the Federal Financial Report. What information do I need to find my FFR, Miles? You would just need 2 pieces of information, your payee account number. And if you have multiple sub-accounts, like I stated earlier, there's multiple awards under one payee account, you would just need your federal award number. The due dates for the annual and final, as I stated before in the call that we had last, was annuals are due 90 days after each budget period end date, whereas your final is due 120 days after the project period end date. This is very, very, very important, because what you do not want to happen is we look into PMS and you have some delinquent reports that haven't been completed. That does not look good on the organization's part, as well as when we have our auditors looking in and doing their work on their end. Please make sure you're submitting reporting with the correct amounts listed on the FFR. Any discrepancies will cause an error within PMS. So this is speaking on, we have a report called the Disbursement Transaction Report. I believe grantees do not have access to this report, but grantees are allowed to request this report from their GMS, who can then pull this down from them. The information that is pulled within PMS comes straight from their system. So we want to make sure that what's in PMS is also accurate within your records department. And we want to make sure that everything is equaling out. So then when you submit your FFR, everything gets approved. And then when we get it, we will approve it for agency approval. Next, we will go to the last slide before the Q&A session, which is my contact information. I believe I've given this out before, but just in case we have anybody new that's joining in from anybody's team, my email address is miles.rather@acl.hhs.gov. Phone number is 202-240-3165. And the best time to contact me, honestly, is anytime. Between 7:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. Feel free to, I respond more quickly to emails, as there's a lot of actions that we have to complete besides just working with the INNU recipient. So If you want to send an email, that's great. If you feel as though it's, a quick question, something easy, simple that a phone call can resolve, you can also call my number anytime between these times. If I do not pick up, I will call you back as soon as possible. So yes, that is all I have to present on. We will then begin the Q&A session. And Carolyn, do you want to read the first question so we are able to answer?
Yes, perfect. Thanks so much, Miles. Let me get these questions popped up here. So the first question we have is from Kristen. You mentioned that an email follow-up with links will be sent to the AO. Will this also be sent to the project director?
Yes. I will make sure I'm going to send it to the AOR as well as I'm going to CC the PIPD associated with the award. So you will get it, Kristen.
Okay, great. Next question is from Kim. I was traveling during the last call. Where can we get access to the recording of that call? So
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm thinking, Kim, this might be related to our last detailed agenda call that we had with the 2023 grantees. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. It was a week or two ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that call, the call recording and then the templates and additional materials were sent out to the 2023 grantees. Let's see, June 23rd. But Kim, I'm happy to forward that if that didn't end up in your inbox.
Okay, it might just be that I'm behind on email. Haven't quite caught up to that yet. So
That happens after travel.
yes.
Okay,
All right,
sounds
thank
great.
you.
I'm happy to email it to you just so you have it.
Great, thanks.
Perfect. Okay, next question we've got here. Miles, I believe you answered this one from Kim regarding what if we have decreases in cost, like
Yes.
reduced fringe rates? Okay, so we'll go ahead and skip over that one since you got that. Next one is from Sandra. In regards to budget revision to line items, is there a % of changes that don't require a submitted budget modification request?
Yes, Sandra, if you're moving anything less than 25% of your federal and non-federal funds, you will not need to submit that amendment. All I request is you send an email to your grants management specialist, who is me, as well as your program officer, explaining the change that's happening, but that is all you will need to do.
Okay, great. Next question is from Jenica. Can you speak a bit more about how a fund pull down and subsequent spending occurs? Are funds transferred immediately to our account? If we are paying an invoice that takes a week to process, will that meet the 3-day holding period you referred to?
So yes, the pulling down of funds, I want to just state that when you make your request in PMS, it usually takes 1 business day, possibly 2 business days, but majority 1 business day for the funds to come to you. Now you can request for the money earlier than when you have the invoice coming in. And I want to speak on a 3-day spending rule. If it goes to a 4th or 5th day that you have the cash on hand, ACO is not going to hound you down to explain why you haven't spent the funds within the first 3 days. It gets just a little bit concerning as the weeks go on and the funds are still on your person. And if you have a valid reason on why funds aren't being spent, you can also send me an email stating, hey, Miles, I drew down funds on X date. I will not be able to pay them off until, let's say, 7 days from now because of this reason. I will just say, okay, that's fine. And you can go and just complete your objectives like you were. Does that answer your question, hopefully?
Yes, Miles, thanks so much. So it sounds as though we should really be requesting funds to be pulled down when we know pretty immediately we're going to have an expense versus, oh, in the next 2 months, we have some expenses coming up. We'll pull down now preemptively and kind of wait until we know immediately this will need to be paid. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
Great. Thank you, Miles.
No problem.
Okay, great. Next question from Kristen. Can you share more about what to expect during our monthly calls with you? Who should attend? Okay, Miles, I can take this one. I think that's for me.
Oh, we have monthly calls.
So, okay, Kristen, thanks for your question. As far as what to expect during the monthly calls, so this first call in July, your NRC and ATA liaison, which would be myself, Ashley Danielson, or Jocelyn Evans, will be present during your call, along with your ACL project officer. And that's Judy Simon for the 2023 cohort. And then really, this first call in July, we'll kick it off with some introductions of everyone. And then ACL is going to be walking through some pertinent information. And then we will walk through your detailed agenda that you will submit for your first call. And then of course, we'll leave any time for questions since it's the first call. Subsequent calls, we will flow through that detailed agenda. Of course, we stop if the NRC and ATA liaison or ACL has any questions, comments, concerns, and that's usually how those calls go. As far as the question of who should attend, so that's a good question. The principal investigator, the individual who's directly overseeing the grant, and then the project coordinator, so the individual who is running the day-to-day operations, we require those individuals to be on the call. Other project staff that may be on the call could include fiscal personnel, contractors, or again, other project staff or coordinators are welcome to attend. Okay, let's see. So we've got another question here from Kim, clarification question. Am I correct that we only need to submit a formal budget revision if we are changing more than 25% of the total budget? If we are making budget changes less than that, we don't need to submit a budget revision, even if the line item is more than a 25% change. For that, we just need to send an email to you and our project director. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was muted for a second. So that, no, you will still need a budget revision. The 25% is not for one specific budget category. It's for all direct cost budget categories. So if you're moving 8% of your personnel, 8% of your fringe, 8% of travel, and the total amount of the funds you are moving compared to your total approved budget is that 25%, then you would need to submit that. Does that make sense, Kim?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's when you would need to submit that. But if you realize you're moving funds around from different budget categories, and in total, the money in total is less than that 25% of your total approved budget, send that email and you're good to go.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
No problem.
Okay, and then Kristen, I just saw your message here. Thank you. Sorry, I thought we had regular calls with Miles as well. Thanks for clarifying. So no, Miles will not be on our monthly calls.
Christian, you can still call. That's fine. You can just check in if you have any better questions. Feel free to send them my way. So
okay.
I am gonna just add one thing about the budget revision. Just remember, this is by budget period. So you're not looking to do more than one budget revision in one budget period because it could affect the entity negatively, and we could put a funding restriction or a limitation for y'all. Just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Alyssa. That is our GMO.
Okay, I don't see any other questions popping in here on the chat. Maybe we'll just give it a minute or so in case anybody has other last burning questions to put in the chat here.
And while the questions are coming in, like I stated before, in the PowerPoint slides, the AOR and the PIPD will get the helpful links, as well as the slides I had presented today. Any questions that you may have after this meeting, feel free to send me an email with them. If they're more of a programmatic question, I will then forward that to the program officer. But if you have any budget, reporting, amendments, or anything revolving your award, just feel free to reach out. Going once, going twice. Oh, here we go.
Okay, question from Jenica. Are we able to have more than one user access the grant management system for the same grant?
Yes, you can have more than one user access to your award. You would just need to have a primary PIPD and a primary AOR. But if you have somebody else that's working on the project a lot and they kind of are doing the same duties as your PIPD, you can get them access. We can attach them to the award and they'll get the same updates and notifications that you would receive. No
Okay,
problem.
I think that's it in the chat, Miles. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this call today. I hope it was informative for you all. And like I stated before, please ask your questions if you have any questions coming up. And I look forward to working with everyone during this fiscal year. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Miles.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
No problem.